Is AI good or bad?
People will lose their job, but that you're saying that's a good thing.
The real crisis is going to be, where does humanity find purpose? We found so much purpose in work.
What do you mean that AI doesn't provide perspective?
There's some beauty in imperfection. I call it our quirks. And the win's in the work, but the work is going to be redefined.
Some people would argue beforehand you were employing 30 people, now you're employing 12.
We're providing double the value at half the price. This is some of the best news ever because it's going to help us recover so much time and so much confusion and have so much more clarity and so much prosperity.
It seems like the way that things are going, there's a lot of fear about AI taking jobs.
Right.
And we don't know, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Is AI good or bad? Well, we're on the precipice of the most exponential growth in wealth that we've ever seen in humanity. And on that path will be some of the greatest destruction, disruption, and elation. Which one is it going to be for people? Well, it depends on if you're afraid of it and you resist it, or if you just start to try it and utilize it. If we look at it, too many people think that there's just this much value in the world, right?
Uh-huh.
And they think if AI comes in and it takes this much of a slice, there's not enough left for the rest of humanity.
Okay.
What you have to recognize is it's an expansive pie. We can actually create more value. Value expands the pie. It accelerates velocity. And so if you have $1, right, and someone else gets that $1, it's not the end of the dollar. They get to spend it again and again and again. And every time it circulates, it's because of a good, a service, or some type of experience, right?
Yeah.
And what that means is value has been exchanged. So it's actually exchange that creates wealth. And so what's happening is one individual can now increase their value with technology.
Mm-hmm.
They can be more efficient, right? They can get rid of some of the busy work that's required but difficult. They can become more valuable.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen is it's going to displace a lot of people. And what the real crisis is going to be is, where does humanity find purpose? We found so much purpose in work. And really what's going to be helpful is perspective, because AI doesn't provide perspective. It's the individual and the human that provides perspective. And so what I think is going to happen is we're going to have an explosion of growth, just like we had with the printing press.
Okay. So explain that. Perspective. What do you mean that AI doesn't provide perspective?
Well, we have to give the prompts. We have to think about this, like, what it is that we're looking for. So think of it as vision. You know, if people are just busy doing and they don't know why, that's trading time for money. Vision's the ultimate container in which we create value.
Okay.
It tells our brain what is important, what to pay attention to. So it's vision that drives value. It's dollars that follow value. So without vision, like, you could dig a hole, but if there's no purpose to that hole, it doesn't matter if a robot could do that faster.
Okay.
If that ends up becoming irrigation that actually brings in water, so that you're not just carrying buckets all the time, all of a sudden you now have a process. But someone had to have the vision to say, we're looking to provide water, or like someone came up with that idea. And so AI is really effective at executing and figuring out like data that might take forever to get for a human being, or it might allow that human being to get answers much quicker, or it might allow them to do work like where they don't have to write every single thing down. They could put in a basic framework and then it can bring it out, or they can, you know, study someone and learn more about who they are and what's important to them that AI can do for them. And now what they could do is spend more time one-on-one. And I think intimacy is going to be key, where we're actually with human beings, listening to them, asking them questions, being more connected. What some people think will happen is, people will do less work. Well, entrepreneurs will do more work with AI.
Okay.
You give an entrepreneur these tools, they're not going to slow down. They're going to do more.
So how about in your own business right now? You're starting a new business. It's a much smaller team than what you had before. How is AI helping you to kind of?
So we have a thing called Ask Garrett Gunderson.
Okay.
And people in my multiplier community use it all the time. and they just ask questions, and it gives really great responses because we put all my books in there. We put transcripts of different videos that I've done. We put articles in there. And so it comes up with really great answers really quickly when I'm asleep. And so that really helps someone. I also have a content creator, right? And so I still write a ton in my content creator, but then it helps organize the thoughts. It helps do research for me and get citations for me. And so now it used to take me 6 hours to write an article. I got down to about 2 hours, and now I can do it more in less than an hour, right? Oh. Because it helps me with so many things that just took a lot of time. This thing, GenSpark AI, I use that to find out more about people. If I'm meeting someone, I can do so much research so that I get to know a little bit about them that can help me be more valuable in the conversation and understand what they're looking for. And so that's awesome. I mean, even just using Suno, this has been awesome for me. I'm really good at like writing lyrics. I'm not really good at guitar. I have a guitar. I can play a little bit. I'm not great. So on Father's Day, I was able to write 2 songs, one with my wife for her dad and one for my dad. And they both got really, pretty emotional listening to these songs that were orchestrated that we were able to create in 30 minutes.
Just you wrote the lyrics and then you fed it to Suno and had it.
And said what kind of music we were looking for. Now, people that aren't using AI at all are afraid of it because it's new, it's unfamiliar. And humanity has moved at a very slow pace, right? Whenever the first human was to where we're at today, it's been fairly anemic in progress. It's been pretty slow, but all of a sudden it's exponential. And this is what makes people afraid. They're like, man, what's it going to be like? How do we handle this? How do we predict it? It's much less predictable because it's moving so quickly and the development happens so much. So that's why we sat here on a Sunday with Matt, one of my business partners, and he just taught AI to my kids and to my nephew, both my nephews and my niece. And, we built a website for my nephew that has a dog poop cleanup business in 5 minutes, just doing audio, just talking to it. And the code was being written right there, which would have been impossible for me to do, impossible for my young nephew to do. And it was super fun. We just had this great day. And I think it took away some of the fear. Now, is there going to be issues? Probably. We probably aren't going to have enough safeguards. We're probably going to see some real problems. But that's what happens in the world of disruption.
So what are some other similar historical disruptions that you feel like are in line or parallel what we're now seeing with AI?
This is greater than Gutenberg's printing press, which people thought this is going to just destroy society because all the scribes are going to be out of work. But what it did was it democratized education, meaning all of a sudden everybody had access to knowledge. Everything has its downside. We could look at the how demonstrative social media has been, at people feeling disconnected, even though they're more connected than ever before. People are not leaving their houses because they're in virtual reality. Like there are all those elements and issues, but at the same time, when used appropriately in the right context, right? Not to replace human connection, but to enhance it, it could be extraordinarily valuable, but could also be addictive.
Yeah.
Just like any vice could be addictive.
So I have fear about AI taking over. What's your kind of sentiment of how to distill that fear?
Well, so I'm just telling my kids, use it, test it. And they're like, where do I start? I'm like, ask ChatGPT, have a conversation with it. Just, my wife's using it all the time now. And it's pretty amazing what O3 and O3 Pro have been able to do with more deep research. And so my son wants to get a better score on his ACT. Well, we had hired varsity tutors. It was expensive. It was cumbersome. Now I'm going to ChatGPT O3 and saying, if my son wants to improve his ACT score, what do we need to do? And it says, buy this, upload it here, and then we'll take him through the process. So all of a sudden it's at his way that he learns and can accelerate that learning. I have a friend named Carl, and he's building a thing called the Great University. And he's like, imagine if Socrates was your philosophy teacher. You had AI Socrates one-on-one with you. And he's like, we could have 1,000 different professors and people would get a degree and they could pay, hundreds of dollars instead of tens of thousands of dollars to be educated in such an amazing way. That's the use of AI.
You previously had a business that had how many people in it?
We probably had like close to 30 people.
Okay. And now this business is about how many?
12.
So, little less than half.
And we're even more effective. We have this thing called X1 Wealth. Right? Also, AKA Wealth Labs. You see Wealth Labs here. And we've got these AI tools where someone can upload their taxes and it'll tell them, here's where you're probably overpaying tax.
based off of the philosophies and research that you guys have done.
Right. We've trained it, right? We could put in their wills and trusts, and it can say, hey, here's the issues. Here's what's missing. Have you thought about this? All of a sudden, they're more prepared. We can have a dynamic way to look at like their economic independence number, which economic independence is how much do you have to have every month coming from assets to cover your basic expenses. And then they can see that.
I think some people would argue, beforehand you were employing 30 people, now you're employing 12. So that means less people are employed.
Our program used to be $7,500 down. I think we got up to $8,400 down, and it was $450 a month. And now it's $3,500 down, comes with this entire AI suite that helps them be more informed. They still get one-on-one coaching.
Oh, gotcha.
And I'm still teaching every week, so it's more affordable for them.
Okay, gotcha.
Right? Even though we're providing even double the value at like half the price almost. Yeah. So not quite half, but
I mean, I guess it's kind of like the education part that you're talking about with, Socrates teaching. Biggest holders of debt right now are student loans, right?
Yep. And those are like the unforgivable loans.
Yeah.
They follow you around your whole life.
Yeah.
And
like,
sometimes you
cut that in I mean, more than half, you cut into like a tenth
or none.
Right. That's true. With AI aiding you.
Yeah. So I think it's really helpful. I mean, even when I meet with an attorney, I'm analyzing everything through, GPT first or through X1 Wealth. And then now it's a more effective meeting.
What is the benefit to the life value, the life design aspect?
Well, there's a lot of work that people do that they don't enjoy.
Okay.
It's just like I have to.
Yeah.
Taking care of certain things when you have a home.
Yeah.
Managing, even when you're renting, different things you have to do on a daily basis that when you have to do that and it's draining your energy and you procrastinate it and you're like, it feels overwhelming. When AI can handle that, now you have time for creativity. You have time for leisure. You're not going to be as overwhelmed to get things done when you've got real support.
Okay, so it sounds like you're saying that people will lose their job with AI.
Yep.
But that you're saying that's a good thing.
Well, new jobs will appear. People will become more productive. It's just going to be disruptive. It's just how it is. It's like creative disruption. You'll find troughs, and then you'll find all of a sudden, new heights. And almost all media sound bites are so negative about AI because it's easy to sell fear. That's the media's job, is to sell fear. So that hits a certain part of the brain. That scarcity kicks in. I mean, I've seen so many different reports about AI is coming for your job, and and what are you going to do about it? And humanity's done, and we're all going to die. And I mean, they said this about other stuff through history.
Yeah.
Now this is, this probably is a lot more risky than anything that we've ever done before, but it's also way more valuable than anything we've ever seen or done before. I mean, it's just like, it just trims so much of the fat and inefficiency and the drudgery. But creativity could be on the rise. Being an artist can be on the rise. Finding ways to really connect with human beings and see them, hear them, be with them, invent new ideas, build bigger visions, think about the impact that we could have, solve world problems. I mean, that's the way to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Naval Ravikant said that the one thing AI cannot do is be truly creative, because creativity requires a soul.
That's the perspective piece, right? That's like, and I think that there's some beauty in imperfection. I call it our quirks.
Yeah.
Some people don't like their quirks. Some of the quirks are the coolest, funnest things about people.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I like about being married for 23 years is like, my wife knows all my quirks and she thinks most of them are cute. And I think that what's quirky about her is super cute. And so some people might call that a flaw, but that's like being human. Like, nobody's really wanting perfection. Perfection is pretty boring, and it wouldn't feel connected, So I think that hopefully this will allow us just to be more human. Sometimes human creativity, like with music, is something was a mistake during a recording. You're like, wait, let's try that again.
Yeah.
Or, like if you watch a documentary on pet sounds and what the Beach Boys did with that and how revolutionary it was, or if you look at Revolver from the Beatles and what they did, they were like pulling things and making different sounds. And, you hear about like some of the coolest rap beats came from like something that they didn't mean to do. And it was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then they roll with it. And so that imperfection has some real substance to it.
Embrace imperfection.
Perfectly imperfect.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Like, we'll have more time to be bored. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
So I went to Italy. I talk about this quite often because we were there for 63 straight days and I didn't really work. I wrote for 5 days, did very few calls, and I found myself bored at times because I was up earlier than my family.
Yeah.
And I would just sit out, at the villa and sometimes take a walk. And I just was alone with my thoughts more than normal. And I didn't really like being bored, but all of a sudden I started thinking about things I didn't think about. Like, well, what are some hobbies that I want to do?
Yeah.
What are some things that would make life more fun? In this cabin, I got my whiskey somm when I came back. So I got all the whiskey on the corner there. I started to learn how to make a great cup of coffee with pour overs or lattes. I started shooting a bow. That boredom led to me doing comedy because I got to a place where I was like, well, what would be fun? What would be interesting? What would be entertaining? What else could I be doing? And that boredom created that space, that kind of void where there's a blank slate for creation, not just hearing and being in the busyness and the hustle of every day. I think that's helpful. I think when kids get bored before there was technology, they would just go out and throw rocks or, make an imaginary friend or ride their bikes somewhere. I'd go catch salamanders down at the creek. I would, there's just different things that you do. You just kind of go play home run derby out, you just find things to do. You just make stuff up. You just go on an adventure. And so, when we're bored and not just being entertained, like mindlessly watching something, we can start to think about like, well, what do we really want? Because there's a lot of things that people do that they don't want to do, but they feel like they have to do. What happens when we get to a place where we get to do things, where it's a choice, not that it has to be done to pay the bill or it has to be done to maintain the thing or whatever those little like details are that take up so much of people's lives that they just get done so they can be done with it and they're glad when it's done, but they dread doing it. Like what happens when that's removed? Maybe the boredom is invention, maybe a burst through of creativity. Maybe a chance to get to know ourselves a little bit better or the people that we love at a deeper level because we're not always distracted with, well, I got too much of a to-do list to get done, but I know this about the brain. We'll come up with new to-do lists. We'll come up with new and creative things that we never thought of before. I mean, look at some of the richest people. They're like, oh, how do we get to space? It's like, it's like that comes from being like, well, I've kind of figured out everything there is to figure out here. What's next? Yeah. And it pushes humanity forward.
Yeah. So the boredom inspires creativity.
Yeah, I think it's okay to be bored sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, I think being always doing something, sometimes people do to escape and they never get to think about what do you really want? What's most important to you?
Gotcha.
What really matters? What makes you feel important? What makes you feel loved? What makes you feel creative? What allows you to reconnect? I mean, I like to go hunting because I just have a lot of quiet time. I'm walking slowly. I'm really aware of my surroundings. I'm seeing a lot of cool beauty. But I'm also getting time to think deeply about what's next and what I'm up to. Thoughts that I don't normally have because I might have a podcast on in the background or music on in the background. It's just like that quiet, is pretty instrumental.
Yeah. It makes me think of I Am Legend.
Yeah.
With Will Smith, where she has a phrase, I forget exactly what she says, but she's like, the world was so noisy before, but it's a lot quieter now.
I have someone I met, we were both speaking at this event, and he did it 5 days in a dark room. No light at all. Wow. And he says he just slept like the first 17 hours and got a lot of rest. And then he found that instead of having like this monkey mind where it's just like, different thoughts all the time and just coming in, it's like he could go deeper. He got calmer. He got clearer. And so that's just something that, people sometimes just being in nature, hiking, having a fire and sitting around the fire, those kind of things. Hopefully we'll just find a way to enjoy that a lot more in this new frontier because I don't think AI is going to be wanting to do any of that kind of stuff. And why don't we just think of what would it be like to be an artist? I mean, one of my favorite authors and thinkers in the world is Rick Rubin with The Creative Act, which is all about just the act of creating the art is the joy. And that's very much win, then play, my philosophy in Money Unmasked of design a game worth playing, you've already won. And the win's in the work, but the work is going to be redefined. And if all of a sudden the work isn't just the tedious pieces, but it's the things that matter the most, because we can delegate and offload to AI, we get to that core center place of intimacy, of connection, and of artistry that I think really could light people up. Because most entrepreneurs I know are actually just artists in business clothing. And when they get too addicted to KPIs and when they start to scale so much, it becomes so corporate, they kind of lose their identity and they lose the joy of the business. I know that kind of happened to me with my last company. And so I've really been designing everything, and whether people come to my cash cabin and we have this one-on-one around this table for a day, or whether it's multiplier where I see them on the screen when I'm teaching from week to week, like I'm more about like, I want to be part of their life. I want to communicate with them. I want to know them. I want to be, I don't just want to have like numbers on a piece of paper or a black screen that I'm talking to. Like even having you here, right? It just makes this so much more fun because I feel like I'm having a conversation with you, Weston, even though people think you're AI.
Yeah.
And it's like, whether it's the drive up here, whether it's when we're having lunch together, or whether it's you're just asking the questions here, it gives me a chance to get to know you better. You get to know me better. And I think that what if we could just have better conversations because of this? What if, because we're more intelligent, because we learn faster and we have access to more, critical information, and that we can learn at an exponential rate. And then maybe we just have a more fascinating life because of that. And instead of like the survival life isn't very fascinating when people are stuck in scarcity, they're in fear, doubt, and worry, where they're just trying to get by, where they're exhausted because of all the work that they do, it actually diminishes who they are as a person. But when we have more energy, because we've offloaded those things, we show up as the best version of who we are. And when there's excitement about something new and that we're learning, like I know Stephen Palmer on the team, like when he started to learn AI, he just got obsessed with it. He got excited about it. And it was like this thing that he wanted to talk about all the time. And when Matt's showing me all these different tools, or we sit around the table, it just allows us to get things done faster. So that, think about it, with AI, we didn't have less brainstorming when we had our media retreat.
We had more. Yeah.
We had more. Because we weren't mired in the details. We could move quicker with things, and we came up with new ideas, and we could execute on those ideas faster. And a lot of what happens with people is they might have really good ideas, but there's a long time to execution, right? And this is where they get sabotaged, because do they have the staying power? Do they have the money? Will they still have kind of that interest? And if all of a sudden we go from idea to the end result in a fourth of the time, all of a sudden we become so much more effective, because how much potential is lost between potential and when it's actually profitable, where someone else can actually benefit from it or use it. If we can shorten that pathway or accelerate that pathway, we could see more profitability. And also we can focus on the things that are most valuable. Because I wonder like how much value people create on a daily basis in a really tough corporate structure. How many wasted meetings are there? How much of a committee is there? How much are they trying to not make errors, and they have to do a lot of additional work to kind of get the research? Like what happens when we can just become more valuable is that is going to be an explosion of value. That's going to be not just slow, that's going to be exponential. And so again, we have to go back to, if the pie's not finite, but it actually expands through AI, because more and more value starts to happen, and because people become more valuable when it comes to serving others. That's the thing. Like, if we're using it to serve others, that's the key. If we're using it to solve problems, that's amazing, right? So it really comes down to this added value game. And added value, if we look back in the old days, you couldn't just get on a plane and go anywhere in the world. Yeah. Right? Like it would just take forever to get your horse and carriage and go somewhere.
Yeah, and the world's so much larger and so much more distant.
Back in the day, you write a letter and then you send it overseas, and months later it might get to someone.
Yeah, if it doesn't get lost.
Now we could have that message in seconds, right?
Yeah.
Right. And so like, wow, this is like efficiency, but we have to learn how to be efficient instead of scared. When people are in scarcity, they're scared. They're in fear. Oh, I don't know what this is going to be. I want things to stay the same. They're in worry. I don't know what to do. I'm just in my head thinking, I don't want this to happen, and I'm losing sleep, and that creates all sorts of stress. And so what that actually does is decrease value when it's in inaction. But just trying it, just learning about it, just using it, and use it as a way to increase your value, to be a way to increase what you can do for people. It might mean, if we go to my impact equation, it's a very simple equation. It just says how many people we serve and how deeply we serve them. Right? And so if AI can help us to serve more people or more deeply impact those people, when you think about what we're doing with X1 Wealth, All of a sudden, they've got this power at their fingertips with AI that would have taken years and years and becoming some type of financial professional to actually learn about it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not an attorney, but all of a sudden I can really look through things. I mean, I've read so many, you know, estate plans over the years that I'm pretty good. I couldn't draft one, but I can read through and find out where the issues are.
Yeah.
And that could take me an hour, and it took me an hour of tedious work. I didn't enjoy it. That takes me 5 minutes now. 5 minutes, and it means 55 minutes back into my life of things that I didn't want to do, but was required in order to provide the value I wanted to provide. Now what can I do with the other 55 minutes? Well, what if those 55 minutes now, I'm sitting down and asking people questions? You know, I was just at this table earlier today talking to one of my clients, and we're just talking about legacy, how they plan on, you know, raising their kids, what they're going to provide and not provide, how they can make sure that there isn't entitlement, what kind of, you know, family bank they could create, what interest rates they might charge, and if they have to pay. It's like, it was all these more fascinating things that had so much to do with impact in their life. And if I would have had that hour where I had to read their plan first, instead of just run it through the system, those 55 minutes are all through reading. And I'm just saying, here's your 3 problems. Okay, let's fix these problems. But we never get to the depth. We never get to what they actually wanted. You know, and you saw, we just had an exchange. We paused the recording, went down and talked to him for a minute because they just came back from riding my Can-Am. And he was thankful. He's like, yeah, thanks for hearing me out and understanding what my vision is and knowing where I want to go. And it's like, yeah, I got to just spend time in question. What do you want? What's important to you? What are you concerned about? What would be ideal for you? Like, how do you want to handle this? It's like, I just got to know them so much better because of these tools.
Yeah.